Are you seeing a ghost? I asked, standing in the doorway of our old house, watching my wife Lisa's face turn completely pale. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor I had installed myself 3 years ago. The noise echoed through the living room, crowded with people I didn't recognize, all dressed elegantly, all celebrating something. Lisa staggered backward, her hand flying up to cover her open mouth in shock. Nick? Nick, how are you here? I smiled, adjusting the Armani suit I had bought in New York the week before. Surprise, honey. I heard you were celebrating my death. My name is Nick Thompson, and at 32, I just found out that my own wife had organized my funeral 6 months ago. The problem is, I wasn't dead. I was busy becoming a millionaire. The music stopped abruptly. Conversations ceased. 15 people in my living room stared at me as if I were an apparition. On the dinner table, I recognized the plates we had received as a wedding gift, now serving expensive canapés for a party that was clearly not in my honor. But the accident, Lisa stammered, her legs shaking visibly. The truck, your car, they found blood. Oh yes. The accident. I walked calmly to the center of the room, my hands in my pockets, observing every face present. Funny how a planned accident can go wrong, isn't it? That's when I saw my brother Derek in the corner of the room, trying to discreetly hide behind a decorative column. Our eyes met, and the panic I saw in his eyes confirmed everything I needed to know. The plan had been simple: kill me on the country road, make it look like an accident, and divide up the inheritance I had just received from my Uncle Edward. $25 million they thought I would never find out about. What they didn't know was that I had survived. More than that, I had spent the last 6 months investigating their every move, every lie, every forged document. And now I was back, not only alive, but prepared. Lisa leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Nick, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. I laughed, a sound that made several people recoil. You mean it's not a party to celebrate my death and your new life with my best friend Tyler? I pointed to the tall blonde man who was trying to hide behind the bar. Tyler froze, a martini halfway to his mouth. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the same one Lisa always said she hated and wanted to throw away. 6 months, Lisa. 6 months you thought you were free. That you could spend my money, sell my company, live in my house as if I had never existed. I pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of my jacket. But there's a small difference between being dead and being missing. A difference that cost you dearly to learn. Lisa finally managed to speak, her voice a desperate whisper. What do you want? I smiled again, but this time there was no humor in it. Justice. And it's coming faster than you think. The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Tyler dropped his martini. Derek tried to run for the back door. Lisa collapsed on the sofa, finally realizing that her new life was about to end. If you're enjoying this story of twists and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because you won't believe how I discovered the truth and planned my return from the dead. But first, let me tell you how it all began, on that Tuesday morning when I received the call that would change my life forever. 6 months ago, on a Thursday morning, my life changed completely with a call from my Uncle Edward's lawyer. $25 million. An inheritance I didn't even know existed. I called Lisa immediately, barely able to control the excitement in my voice. Honey, you won't believe it. Uncle Edward, he left me everything. We're rich, Lisa. We'll never have to worry about money again. There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line. Then her voice came back, controlled, almost cold. That's great, Nick. Talk to me when you get home, okay? I should have noticed the tone. I should have noticed that she wasn't surprised. What I didn't know was that Lisa had already found out about the inheritance 2 weeks before I did. She worked at the accounting firm that managed Uncle Edward's assets and had access to the documents. I also didn't know that she and my brother Derek had been meeting secretly for months, planning how to get rid of me. The conversation that night was a perfect charade. Lisa pretended to be excited, talked about our plans, about how that money would change our lives. Meanwhile, she had already discreetly transferred $15,000 from our joint account to a secret account. 2 days later, I received an urgent call from her. Nick, Derek called. He said he has an emergency and needs to meet you on the country road near the lake. Something about his business going under. My brother Derek had always been trouble. Addicted to gambling, he was always owing money to dangerous people. If he was in trouble, I had to help. He was my brother. I took my truck and drove to the agreed location. It was an isolated road, surrounded by dense forest. Derek was there, but not alone. Tyler, my best friend since school, was with him. They both looked nervous. "Nick, man, thanks for coming," Derek said, approaching me. "Look, I need to tell you something. It's about Lisa." "What about Lisa?" I asked, starting to feel that something was wrong. "She's cheating on you, man. With Tyler here." Derek pointed to our friend, who avoided my gaze. "For months. They're planning to run away together as soon as you get divorced." My world fell apart. Tyler, the man who had been the best man at my wedding, who had dinner at my house every Sunday, whom I considered a brother. "That's a lie," I whispered, but my voice lacked conviction. "Man, I'm sorry," Tyler said, finally facing me. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but Lisa and we fell in love. It just happened naturally." The pain was physical, as if someone had pierced my chest with a burning spear. 3 years of marriage. 15 years of friendship. All a lie. "And there's more," Derek continued, his voice taking on a strange tone. "She knows about the inheritance, Nick. That's why she wants a divorce now. She's going to get half of everything." That's when I realized it. Derek wasn't telling me this out of kindness. There was something else. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. Derek and Tyler exchanged glances. "Look, man," Derek said, "I know this sounds crazy, but what if we split the money between the three of us? You, me, and Tyler. Leave Lisa out of it." "How exactly do you plan to do that?" I asked. "Simple," Tyler replied. "You have an accident. Nothing serious, just serious enough to, I don't know, temporary amnesia? Then we take control of your assets while you recover." They were talking about hurting me. My own brother and my best friend. "Have you lost your minds?" I exploded. "You think I'm going to let you attack me?" "It's not an attack, Nick," Derek said, now with a smile I'd never seen before. "It's an inevitable accident." That's when I saw the truck. Hidden among the trees was a huge black truck. At the wheel was a man I didn't know, wearing a cap pulled down over his face. I understood everything in one terrible second. This wasn't an impromptu plan. It was an ambush. They had lured me here to kill me. "Man, think about it," Tyler said, trying to sound reasonable. "If you die in an accident, Lisa gets everything anyway. But if you cooperate with us, you still get a share." "Are you serious?" I whispered, backing away toward my truck. Derek waved to the man in the truck. The engine roared. I ran. I jumped into the truck and sped away, hearing the roar of the truck behind me. The chase lasted 10 terrifying minutes along the winding road. The truck was faster, heavier. It hit the back of my truck 3 times, trying to throw me off the road. On the third hit, I lost control. The truck rolled twice before hitting a huge tree. I remember the glass shattering, the metal twisting, the explosive pain in my right arm. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed in Nashville, 60 kilometers away. A fisherman had found me unconscious near a creek 3 hours after the accident. My arm was broken, I had a deep cut on my forehead, but I was alive. Most importantly, they thought I was dead. The nurse told me that no family members had come looking for me, that my identity was only confirmed 2 days later through fingerprints, and that when they called my house, no one answered. That's when I understood. Lisa, Derek, and Tyler thought the plan had worked. That I was dead. And they were celebrating. But I wasn't dead. I was angry. And I had 6 months to plan my resurrection. Now, standing in my old living room, watching the terror on the faces of the people I loved most in life, I knew that every second of those 6 months of planning had been worth it. The sound of sirens was getting louder. Tyler had dropped his glass and was trying to hide behind the couch. Derek had turned so pale he looked like a ghost. But Lisa was staring at me with a mixture of horror and something else. something that seemed almost like admiration. "How did you find out?" she whispered. I smiled, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Oh, honey. Do you really think I would spend 6 months away from home without investigating why my own family didn't miss me?" I tapped the screen. Immediately, our conversation from that terrible night began to play through the phone's speakers. Lisa's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Are you sure this will work? What if he survives?" And Derek's voice responding, "Relax, little sister. That truck will make sure there's not even bones left." The last trace of color drained from her face. The sirens stopped outside. Red and blue lights danced through the living room windows. And I still hadn't told them the best part of my resurrection plan. The silence that followed the recording was broken by the sound of Derek vomiting behind the couch. The stress had finally gotten the better of his stomach. This is fake," Lisa stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. "You edited this recording. You're crazy, Nick. The accident affected your head." The two police officers entered the room, their expressions professional as they assessed the scene. The older officer, a gray-haired man who looked like he had seen it all, approached me. "Mr. Thompson? I'm Detective Martinez. We got your call." I handed him a thick envelope that I had carefully prepared. "Detective, here's all the evidence. Audio recordings, bank statements, fake medical documents, phone records. Everything you need for 3 counts of attempted premeditated murder." Tyler, who had been silent until then, finally exploded. "Nick, man, you don't understand. Lisa was pregnant. She was desperate." "Shut up." Lisa shouted, but it was too late. "Pregnant." I repeated, feeling a new wave of nausea. "Pregnant with whose child?" Derek's gaze at the floor was answer enough. It wasn't Tyler's. It was my own brother's. "My God," I whispered. "You 3, how long?" Lisa finally collapsed. She sat heavily on the sofa, covering her face with her hands. 2 years, Nick. Derek and I. It started when you were always working, always away. Tyler found out and he said if we didn't let him in on the plans, he'd tell you everything." "In the plans?" Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. "The inheritance," Derek murmured, finally moving away from the wall where he had vomited. "We knew about the inheritance before Nick did. Lisa worked in the accounting department that manages Uncle Edward's assets. She told me and we thought." "You thought about killing me for money," I finished his sentence for him. "My own brother. My wife. My best friend." What they didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months not only recovering physically, but building an ironclad legal case against them. And uncovering secrets that would make their lives hell. During my death, I used a false identity to infiltrate their social circle. I discovered that Derek didn't owe money to loan sharks. He was stealing money from elderly people through a fraudulent investment scheme. Tyler wasn't just a reluctant participant. He had been blackmailing Lisa for months, forcing her to transfer money from the account of the company where she worked to accounts he controlled. And Lisa was selling confidential information about wealthy clients to gangs specializing in home burglaries. Her job wasn't accounting. It was financial espionage. "Detective," I said, pulling another envelope from the inside pocket of my jacket. "Here's the evidence for the other crimes. Fraud against the elderly, blackmail, and association with a criminal organization." Derek's face drained of color. How did you find out?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "Derek, do you really think I would spend 6 months dead without investigating why no one in my family missed me? You were so busy spending my money and celebrating my death that you didn't even notice I was following your every move." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo I had taken 3 weeks ago, the 3 of them together in an expensive restaurant, toasting with champagne. The date on the photo was exactly 6 months after my funeral. "You even made a toast," I said, zooming in on the image. "To finally getting rid of that idiot Nick." Lisa started to cry, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of anger. "You have no right to judge us," she shouted. "You were a terrible husband. Always working, always ignoring me. I deserve to be happy." "And killing your husband was the path to happiness?" Detective Martinez asked, his voice thick with contempt. It was at that moment that I realized something that made me laugh. A loud, genuine laugh that echoed through the room. Do you want to know the funniest part of this whole story? I asked, looking at each of their terrified faces. The inheritance you killed to get, it doesn't even exist anymore. The silence was absolute. What? Lisa whispered. Over the last 6 months, while you were spending the $15,000 you stole from our joint account thinking you had access to $25 million, I invested every penny of the real inheritance in Bitcoin. Then I sold it all at the peak and reinvested in a tech startup that just got bought by Apple. I paused to let the information sink in. The $25 million inheritance is now worth $82 million. And it's in an account in the Cayman Islands that you'll never be able to touch, even if you don't spend the next 20 years in prison. Derek fell to his knees. Tyler started hyperventilating. Lisa just stared at me with such pure hatred that for a moment it reminded me of the woman I fell in love with years ago. At least now she was showing some real emotion. Detective Martinez signaled to his partner, who began reading them their constitutional rights as he cuffed Derek first, then Tyler. When it was Lisa's turn, she stood up with dignity. Before they cuffed her arms, she looked me in the eye one last time. You're going to regret this, Nick. You don't know who you're messing with. I smiled again. Honey, I know exactly who I'm messing with. The question is, do you? As they led her out of the house, I turned to Detective Martinez. There's one more thing I need to tell you. About the money they stole from the elderly and their connections to a larger criminal network. The detective's eyes lit up. I'm listening. Well, I said, adjusting my tie. This is going to take a little more time. And probably a few cups of very strong coffee. Because what I've discovered about this town over the last 6 months is going to make you rethink how many people you really know. As we left the house, I looked back one last time. 6 months ago, I was just Nick Thompson, an ordinary man married to a woman I thought I loved, brother to someone I trusted, friend to someone I respected. Now I was Nick Thompson, the ghost who had returned from the dead to haunt the living. And the haunting was just beginning. But there was something I hadn't told Detective Martinez yet. Something about the real reason I had allowed them to believe I was dead for so long. And about what I had discovered while investigating my own family. What Detective Martinez didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months not only gathering evidence, but building the most elaborate investigative network that an ordinary person had ever orchestrated. It all started at the hospital in Nashville. When I woke up 3 days after the accident, with partial amnesia and no ID, the doctors registered me as John Smith, a temporary name until my identity could be confirmed. But when I finally regained my memory and learned that my family hadn't come looking for me, I made a decision that would change everything. I kept the false identity. For 6 weeks, while I was recovering physically, I used the time to learn about private investigation, forensic accounting, and financial data analysis. The hospital library had free internet, and I spent 18 hours a day studying. The first step was to find out if they really were considering me dead. I created fake social media profiles and began to observe. Derek posted a photo at the cemetery 3 days after the accident, with the caption, "I'm going to miss my brother." Lisa changed her relationship status to widow that same week. They didn't just think I was dead. They were celebrating. That's when I decided my death would be permanent. For them. Using fake documents I bought on the dark web, I established a new identity, Michael Torres, financial advisor. I rented a small apartment in Atlanta and began my new life as a spy on my own family. The first month was spent setting up surveillance. I installed micro cameras in the house I had bought myself, devices Derek would never suspect existed because I had hidden them during construction. I tapped Lisa's phone using spyware I installed remotely. I hired a private investigator to follow Tyler. But what I discovered was far worse than a simple plot to kill me. Derek wasn't just wasting money on gambling. He was running a Ponzi scheme against retirees in our town. Using our family's inherited charm and his trustworthy appearance, he convinced elderly people to invest their life savings in an exclusive investment fund that didn't exist. The list of victims made me feel physically sick. Mrs. Martinez, who had lost her home. Mr. Peterson, who now lived with his daughter because Derek had stolen his retirement plan. 15 families destroyed to finance the luxurious lifestyle Derek maintained. Tyler was even deeper in the mire. He wasn't just Lisa's lover, He was the mastermind behind a blackmail operation targeting wealthy executives' wives. The scheme was simple. Tyler seduced the women, recorded intimate encounters without consent, and then extorted money from them under threat of showing the recordings to their husbands. Lisa was providing the targets through the financial records she accessed at work. And worse, I wasn't the first husband they had tried to kill. I found records of 2 other men in the last 5 years. Both had died in car accidents after discovering large sums of money. Both were married to women who worked at the same accounting firm as Lisa. My wife wasn't just a murderer. She was a serial killer. It was at that moment that I realized my revenge couldn't just be personal. It had to be complete. During the 3rd month, I began building relationships with the victims. As Michael Torres, I offered free financial advice to the elderly people Derek had stolen from. I gained their trust, documented every fraudulent transaction, every broken promise. Simultaneously, I contacted the wives Tyler was blackmailing. Using information I intercepted from phone conversations, I created situations where I could offer anonymous help. Gradually, I built a group of 15 women willing to testify against him. The 4th month was devoted to investigating the other murders. I worked with private detectives in other cities. We reviewed crime scene evidence and found patterns that the police had missed. We discovered that Lisa had used the same technique in all cases: subtle sabotage of the brakes combined with accidental crashes on isolated roads. If you've ever been in a situation where you discovered that those closest to you were conspiring against you, you understand the cold rage that took over every cell in my body. But don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what I did with that rage was turn it into the most powerful weapon I've ever used. During the 5th month, I began to implement the riskiest phase of the plan, manipulating their behavior from a distance. Using information I had gathered, I began to plant seeds of paranoia between them. I sent anonymous letters to Derek suggesting that Tyler was planning to betray him. I left fake evidence for Tyler to find, suggesting that Lisa was considering turning him in to the police. I created tension between Lisa and Derek by planting doubts about each other's loyalty. The result was exactly what I expected. They started making mistakes. Mistakes that would create even more incriminating evidence. Derek, paranoid about the possibility of being betrayed, began recording conversations with Tyler without his knowledge. Tyler, nervous about the possibility of being abandoned by Lisa, began backing up all the blackmail recordings as life insurance. Lisa, fearing that both of them might betray her, began meticulously documenting all illegal financial transactions. Each of them was creating evidence against the other 2, unaware that I was collecting it all. In the 6th month, the moment I had planned for since day 1 finally arrived: my return from the dead. But there was one element of my revenge that I had not yet revealed to Detective Martinez. An element that would make their downfall not only legal, but also publicly humiliating. During those 6 months, while they lived my life and spent my money, I had been building something much bigger than a simple criminal investigation. I had been building a documentary. Every recorded conversation, every fraudulent transaction, every moment of casual cruelty had been captured in high definition. I worked with an independent filmmaker from Atlanta, secretly financing a project that would expose not only their crimes, but also the larger network of corruption they were a part of. The documentary would be released simultaneously with the arrests, ensuring that their downfalls were not only private but permanently recorded in digital history. As Detective Martinez reviewed the evidence I had provided, I looked out the window of the police car, watching Derek being placed in the back seat of another car. He was crying, finally realizing there was no escape. But he still didn't know about the documentary. None of them did. And when they found out the next morning, when they woke up in jail and saw their crimes being broadcast across the country, well, that would be the icing on the cake of my resurrection. Detective Martinez closed the folder and looked at me with an expression of reluctant admiration. "Mr. Thompson, in my 20-year career, I've never seen such a thorough civilian investigation. This is enough to put all 3 of them behind bars for the rest of their lives." I smiled, adjusting my Rolex watch, a gift I had bought myself with the first profits from my investments. "Detective, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, the whole world will know who they really are." But there was one last surprise I had in store. A surprise that would turn their public humiliation into something even more devastating. The last surprise I had saved wasn't just a documentary. It was a live broadcast. As Detective Martinez finished reviewing the evidence, I pulled out my phone and tapped a red icon on the screen. Immediately, All the televisions in the police station turned on simultaneously, displaying the logo Justice Live, the return of the dead. "What the hell?" the detective muttered, watching the screens. 2 hours ago, I explained calmly, I started broadcasting this entire operation live. 52,000 people are watching the arrest of my own family in real time. And the number is rising every second. On the screens, we could see different angles. Derek being put into the police car, Tyler trying to hide his face from the cameras, Lisa being handcuffed while screaming that it was all a lie. Every moment was being recorded and broadcast to the whole world. But that was just the beginning. "Detective," I continued, "what you don't know is that during those 6 months, I wasn't just collecting evidence against the three of them. I was dismantling an entire criminal network." I pulled out another envelope, this one much thicker than the previous ones. Lisa wasn't just killing wealthy husbands in isolation. She was part of a much larger scheme. An organization that operates in 8 states, connecting corrupt accountants, dishonest private investigators, and even bribed judges. Detective Martinez's face turned pale. "How many victims are we talking about?" 43 confirmed murders in the last 10 years. All men who had received significant inheritances or windfalls. All killed in convenient accidents, after their wives found out about the money. As I spoke, my phone began ringing incessantly. Calls from the FBI, the national media, lawyers offering their services. The story was spreading like wildfire. But the real bombshell was yet to come. "What about my brother Derek?" I continued, watching through the window as he was put into the police car. His Ponzi scheme wasn't amateurish. It was financed by a money laundering network connecting Mexican cartels to shell companies in Delaware. The 15 elderly people he stole from were just the tip of the iceberg. Detective Martinez dropped the pen he was holding. "Mr. Thompson, are you telling me your family was involved with drug cartels?" "Not just involved. Derek was one of the main operators on the East Coast. And Tyler," he smiled coldly. "Tyler wasn't just blackmailing executives' wives. He was photographing and filming the wives of senators, federal judges, and CEOs of multinational corporations. Material that was being used for political blackmail on a national scale." It was at that moment that my phone rang with a call I had been expecting for weeks. The number had a Washington, D.C. area code. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice on the other end was formal, official. "This is Special Agent Davidson of the FBI. We need to talk. Immediately." I smiled at Detective Martinez. "Detective, it looks like our little local operation just turned into a federal investigation." But there was one last twist that even the FBI wasn't expecting. During the 6 months of my death, I hadn't just been collecting evidence. I had infiltrated the organization. As Michael Torres, the financial advisor, I gained access to documents that showed the true extent of the operation. And I discovered something that would bring this entire network crashing down like a house of cards. "Agent Davidson," I said into the phone, putting it on speaker so the detective could hear. "Before we meet, there's something you need to know. The operation my family was running, it had protection from within the FBI itself." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "What exactly are you saying, Mr. Thompson?" I pulled out a red folder, the last one I had saved. "I'm saying that Special Agent Richard Morrison, from the Atlanta Financial Crimes Division, received $300,000 over the last 2 years to bury investigations into the suspicious deaths of wealthy men. I'm saying that Federal Judge Sandra Chun received $500,000 to ensure that contested inheritance cases were dismissed without trial." The phone was silent for a long moment. "I'm saying," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "that this operation goes far beyond my family. And that the evidence I've gathered will bring down not only the criminals at the bottom, but also those who were protecting them at the top." That's when I heard the noise I'd been waiting for 6 months. The sound of several police cars arriving at the station simultaneously. They weren't local police cars. They were black SUVs with federal license plates. Through the window, I saw Lisa being transferred from a local police car to a federal vehicle. Even from a distance, I could see the exact moment she realized that this had grown far beyond what she had imagined. It was no longer just about murder or fraud. It was about national treason. Derek, always the most limited of the three, was still trying to negotiate with the federal agents, apparently offering information in exchange for a deal. Tyler had completely broken down, sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. "Mr. Thompson," Agent Davidson said, his voice now laden with an urgency that hadn't been there before. "We need you to come to Washington immediately. And we need you to bring everything. All the evidence, all the recordings, all the documents." "Of course," I replied. "But there's one condition." "What condition?" "The live broadcast continues. This entire process, from arrest to trial, will be public. Total transparency. The American people will see exactly how this corruption worked and how it was dismantled." There was a pause. Then a resigned sigh. "Understood, Mr. Thompson. Transparency will be maintained." I hung up the phone and turned to Detective Martinez, who was looking at me with a mixture of admiration and terror. "Detective," I said, adjusting my tie one last time. "What started as personal revenge has just become the largest anti-corruption operation in modern American history." As we walked toward the federal SUVs, my phone showed that the live stream had surpassed 200,000 views. The comments were a mix of outrage, support, and disbelief. But there was one message that caught my attention, from a user identified only as Silent Victim 47. "Thank you for giving a voice to those who couldn't fight back. My husband died in a similar accident 3 years ago. We finally have hope for justice." It was at that moment that I fully understood what my resurrection had set in motion. It wasn't just about my family. It was about all the families destroyed by this web of greed and corruption. It was about all the voices that had been silenced and now had the opportunity to be heard. I got into the federal SUV knowing that my old life as Nick Thompson had died definitively on that road 6 months ago. The man emerging from the ashes was someone completely different. Someone who had seen the darkest side of human nature and chosen to fight it, no matter the cost. As we pulled away from the police station, I saw through the rear window the crowd of reporters that had gathered. The camera lights, the microphones being held out, the questions shouted into the air. My personal revenge had become a national revolution. And that was just the beginning. 2 years later, sitting on the porch of my new home in Colorado, I watched the snow-capped mountains as I review the last chapter of the book I'm writing, Resurrected: How I Survived My Own Funeral. The documentary Justice Live: The Return of the Dead broke all Netflix viewing records. 230 million views in the first week. The impact was so great that Congress passed new legislation known as the Nick Thompson Act, establishing stricter protocols for investigating suspicious deaths and creating a national database to track patterns of inheritance murders. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. During the trial, he tried to plead temporary insanity, but the recordings I had collected showed clear premeditation over months. The last I heard, he was in the maximum security wing, where he spent his days writing hate letters that no one reads. Derek received 45 years for multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and association with criminal organizations. The Ponzi scheme he operated had destroyed the lives of 152 families. During his sentencing, he finally confessed that he had always been jealous of my success and that the inheritance was just the final excuse to do what he had always wanted: destroy me. He is serving his sentence in a federal prison in Texas, where he works in the kitchen for $2 an hour. Tyler was sentenced to 25 years for blackmail, extortion, and conspiracy. The recordings he had made of politicians and executives' wives led to the downfall of 3 senators and 2 CEOs of multinational corporations. The FBI discovered that he kept a digital archive with over 500 hours of compromising material. He was transferred to a medium security prison after receiving several death threats from other inmates whose wives had been his victims. Lisa received the heaviest sentence of all: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 43 premeditated murders. Her trial lasted 6 months and was televised nationally. During the trial, we discovered that she had started killing wealthy husbands while still in college, using a method she had perfected over 15 years. The investigation revealed that she was not only a serial killer, but also the mastermind of a network of women operating in 12 different states. She is currently in solitary confinement in a maximum security federal prison, where she will spend the rest of her life. The latest information I have received indicates that she still denies all the crimes and blames society for forcing intelligent women to take drastic measures to survive. My mother, Patricia, perhaps received the most painful punishment of all. She was not arrested. Technically, her only involvement was providing false testimony, and she cooperated fully with the authorities when she understood the extent of the crimes. But the social isolation was devastating. During the documentary, it was revealed that she had signed documents declaring me mentally unstable without even reading the content, simply because Derek said it was to help the family. The public humiliation was so intense that she had to move 3 times. She currently lives in a small apartment in Arizona, where she works as a clerk in a convenience store. She calls me every Sunday. I always answer. Our conversations are brief, polite, but laden with a sadness that will never be fully healed. I have forgiven her, but our relationship will never be the same. Some wounds heal, but they leave permanent scars. The money. Well, the 82 million turned into an even greater fortune through careful investments. But I discovered that wealth without purpose is just a prettier golden prison. I used 20 million to create the Silenced Voices Foundation, which offers free legal support to people whose families have tried to declare them mentally incompetent in order to steal their inheritances. We have already helped more than 300 people regain their lives and their assets. Another 15 million funds a national witness protection program for cases of financial domestic violence. I discovered that my case was not unique. There are thousands of people being systematically robbed and manipulated by greedy family members. The rest? Well, I discovered that money is a powerful tool when used to build rather than destroy. I bought the old company where Lisa worked and turned it into a financial security consulting firm that teaches people how to protect their assets from family fraud. The irony did not escape me. The place where she planned my death now saves financial lives every day. My personal life has also been completely transformed. I met Sarah, a lawyer who works with victims of domestic violence, at a conference on financial crime. She didn't know my story when we met. She saw me only as Nick, the speaker who talked about resilience and rebuilding. We got married last year, a simple ceremony in the mountains, surrounded only by people we truly love and who love us back. There is no fear, no mistrust, just the peace that comes from building something real on solid foundations. Sometimes people ask me if I feel remorse for revenge. They wonder if I went too far by destroying not only the lives of those who tried to kill me, but an entire network of corruption. My answer is always the same. I didn't seek revenge. I sought justice. The difference is that revenge destroys without building. Justice removes what is rotten so that something healthy can grow in its place. Every person who was arrested deserved their sentence for the crimes they committed, not only against me, but against dozens of other victims. Every institution that was exposed and reformed now works better and protects more people. Every law that was passed saves lives. My resurrection from the dead wasn't just about proving I was alive. It was about ensuring that the people they killed did not die in vain, and that people who had not yet been attacked would be protected. The most important lesson I learned was not about revenge or justice. It was about the transformative power of truth. For 6 months, I lived in the shadows, collecting facts, documenting crimes, building an irrefutable case. The truth, when finally revealed, not only freed me, it freed hundreds of other people who were trapped in the same cycles of abuse and manipulation. Today, when I wake up every morning in this house I built with honest money, in a relationship based on genuine trust, surrounded by people who know me completely and love me anyway, I know that the greatest revenge I achieved was not their downfall. It was my own resurrection. Not just as Nick Thompson who survived an attack, but as the man who chose to use his second chance to be better than those who tried to destroy him. If you've ever been betrayed, manipulated, or had your life turned upside down by people who were supposed to protect you, remember, they may try to bury you, but they don't know you're a seed. And when you sprout again, you'll be stronger, wiser, and more determined than they could ever imagine. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of people who refused to remain victims and chose to write their own happy endings. The last time I heard from Marcus, Derek, Tyler, and Lisa, they were still serving their sentences, probably regretting underestimating the power of a dead man who refused to stay buried. Me? I'm here, alive, thriving, and truly free for the first time in my life. And every day, I wake up grateful not only that I survived, but that I discovered who I really am when all the masks come off. Sometimes, dying is exactly what you need to finally start living.